Let's move on to the bronze section now. We're currently in the section for rectangle geometry. So let's look at the problem square pasture. So Farmer John has decided to update his farm to simplify its geometry. Previously, his cows grazed in two rectangular fenced-in pastures. Farmer John would like to replace these with a single square fenced-in pasture of minimum size that still covers all the regions of his previous two fences. Help Farmer John figure out the minimum area he needs to make his new square pasture so that if he places it appropriately, it can still cover all the area formerly covered by the two older rectangular pastures. The square pasture should have its sides parallel to the x and y axis. The first line in the inputs has four integers x1, y1, x2, y2 in the range between 0 and 10. And x1, y1 is the lower left corner of the pasture, and x2, y2 is the upper right corner of the pasture. The second line is in the same four integer format, and it's the same out input for the second rectangular pasture. The pasture will not overlap or touch the first pasture. And we have to output the minimum area required of a square pasture that would cover all regions. So I just done this problem, but due to an audio issue, it didn't save. So let's just go over the thought process. So there are two rectangular pastures that he had, and now we want a square one. So the point on the bottom left, so like this point and this point, are going to be the x1, y1 points of that rectangular pasture because it's the bottom left, and then the top right will be the x2, y2 points. So the first thing to notice is that we want to output a square, and a square means that it has equal sides. So what we need to find essentially is we want to find the maximum height between these two pastures and the maximum width. And we find which is bigger, and then we use that as the length, and then we square that to get the area. So by finding the height, what I mean is here we see the highest y point is up here in the top right of this rectangular pasture, and the lowest y point is in the bottom left of this rectangular pasture. So in the end, we need to find the highest y point and the lowest y point, and that will give us the minimum height we need to capture both rectangular pastures within a square. And we can do the same thing for the width. The leftmost point is here in the bottom left, and the rightmost point of a potential square would be here. Now clearly we see that this distance is 4. So the minimum width of a square that we need is 4, and the minimum height that we need of a square is 7. So since 7 is bigger than 4, we'll use that as the length of a square, and then our area is going to be 49. So the key thing here is to find the highest y coordinate given the bottom left and the top right. What we need to do is look at all the top right points and get the y coordinate of that and find the maximum of that, because the highest point will always come from a top right point because it's a top point. And by the same logic, the lowest point will come from the bottom left point. And we'll find the min of all these because by definition, it's going to be the point at the bottom of the pasture. So we'll find the pasture at the very bottom. And the width is the exact same thing. We find the highest x from the x2s and the lowest y from the y2s. And that's to find the leftmost point and the rightmost point. So the highest here would be rightmost, and the lowest would be the leftmost. And then once we figure out the height and the width, the answer is just going to be the maximum of this squared, because the maximum would be the length, and we square to get the area. So how do we code this up? So I'm trying to follow the some of the good practices that they gave in the guide, and for one of them they made a struct, which is here. They used a rectangle struct. This isn't a needed thing, it's just a nice way to format your code, so it's a lot easier to read and it's very hard to get confused by what you mean when you code. So we create two rectangles, P1 and P2. And these rectangles have x1, y1, x2, y2 points. So x1, y1 is going to be the bottom left, and x2, y2 is going to be the top right. So we read in the bottom left and the, whoops, and the top right point. Read in the bottom left and the top right point. And now for the max height, we want to find the max y coordinate between the y2s, and for the min height is the min y coordinate between the y1s. And then the height is just going to be the max height minus the min height, and we do the exact same logic for the width. And then in the end, now we know the height, we know the width, it's just the maximum of the height and the width squared. And this should pass. Okay. Let's see if this works. USACO. Square Pasture. There we go. Submit. Oh wait, but I need the weird USACO format. Okay, resubmit. 17 C++ Square Pasture open submit. Yep, and voila.